it is very, very important to understand that at present, the virus COVID-19 is spread in Africa has not yet reached the peak, but its ramification on economy is already visible. Most economies in Africa are contracting. Growth is declining, earning from export is declining, remittance is dwindling, government revenue collection is really facing serious problems. Millions of people are losing their job. The poor are already seriously affected, and as a result, the economy is in deep crisis already. Therefore, finance ministers, together with the health minister, they have to balance. They have to look, first of all, they have to have complete pictures of the impact of the crisis, of the virus, not only as a health problem, but at the same time, as also economic issues. They have to also to understand the context under which the virus is now affecting the continent. This is a continent with really limited resources. Most of the countries are fragile. The economies are basically based on the small and the informal sectors, where there are no access to internet. The access to electricity is very limited. Even the availability of water, drinking water, even for hygiene purposes are limited. Therefore, most African countries, before really they implement this social distancing, stay lockdown and stay at home, they have to look really the impact of these measures in the economy. We cannot do what the advanced economies are doing. Therefore, they have the finance minister and minister of health, they have to have this full picture, the health aspect and the economic aspect, and they have to present to their public and to their governments the implication of the virus on the economy. Yes, I think so. Again, from the perspective of African countries, lockdowns, stay at home, and other social restrictions, they have a limitation to implement. There are challenges in Africa. First of all, there are limitation to access to internet. There are limitations to access to electricity. And the most importantly, in African countries, we have on the one hand, urban slums, when we have highly densely populated areas, and on the other hand, rural areas. Under such circumstances, it's really very challenging even to implement this social restriction, even if it has some health benefits in preventing the spread of the virus. But on the other hand, the ramification on the economy is serious. As I've said earlier, the majority of the people, they live from hand to mouth. They cannot afford to stay for extended period of time at home. They have to find bread, they have the table every day. On the other hand, the capacity of their government to support them physically in terms of safety net or direct support is extremely limited. Therefore, again, the finance ministers of African countries together with the Minister of Health has really to look into other measures. They have to look into, we cannot copy what have been done in advanced countries. Advanced countries, they have the capacities, they have resources, they have technologies, so that people, in most cases, they can work while they are stay at their home. In African countries, it's very difficult to implement such measures. Therefore, I think the African governments, they have to look, depending again on each individual country, they have to really to look to other measures, mainly testings, and then monitoring the spread of the virus, and then gradually they have to really allow the people to work. Otherwise, the ramifications will be serious. And it is unfortunate that it is the poorest who will be hit the hardest. It is the vulnerable who will be hardest. Therefore, the economic ramifications of this lockdown and other social restriction has to be seriously considered before really implemented in all African countries. Yes, over the last 20 years, most African countries' economy has been really doing well. Africa has been growing, investing in health, investing in education, investing in infrastructure, and as a result, poverty has been really declining over the last 20 years. The current crisis will erode all those gains over the last 2 decades. So what can the finance minister do? What can African countries do? The first thing the African finance minister do currently is really to understand this is unprecedented time. It is not business as usual. They have to have this mindset to start with. And then they have to really look into the priorities and budgetary allocations of the current fiscal years. What they can do is really to reallocate budgets from the non-essentials to protect the health system and to protect the poor. They have to decide quickly, they have to be flexible, they have to adjust to the evolving situations. So the first thing that the African finance minister should do is really to look into their in their existing budget, and then to reallocate it. When they are allocated, they have to give priority to the health, as well as to protect the poor who cannot really afford, who will be hit the hardest. Second, they also have to really look beyond once the pandemic is over. No doubt, all the forecast is that for the first time, most African economies will face a recession. So to alleviate their economies, African countries need global support. They cannot, this time, they cannot withstand the impact of the virus on themselves. The World Bank, African Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and other development partners, they have to support African countries. How? First of all, through grants or through concessional loans. I am saying this because most African countries' external debt are already very high. It's already unsustainable. They cannot go on borrowing commercial loans. So they have to get the grants, preferably. If not, they have to get concessional loans that could be paid over a long period of time. They have also to look for the debt relief from the bilateral as well as from multilateral creditors. Once they get these financial institutions, they have to support directly businesses, viable small enterprises. They have to support other export sectors. They have to support their agriculture. They have to support, then they have to invest in infrastructure. So in the short term, finance ministers in many African countries, they have to look into their budgets by reallocating the resources from, for the time being, non-priority areas to extremely priority areas. Second, they have to focus on external resource mobilizations from development partners, from multilateral financial institutions, mainly from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, International Monetary Funds, and other bilateral development partners. And once they raise these resources, then they again have to look into the priority sectors, because they cannot support all businesses at the time. They have to focus on the priority sectors. So in this way, together with the international communities, the African countries can somehow revive their economies once the virus crisis, once the health crisis is over. But we want to underline that African countries, they cannot by themselves really navigate this crisis. They have to get substantial support from international community. And the World Bank, IMF, G20, they are all now positively talking of debt reliefs or debt moratorium, and to raise additional resources to support African countries. So these are the two areas, short term and the long term.